What's up, everybody? Hope everyone is having a great Thursday. This afternoon, I am with a special guest, one of my favorite Miami Hurricanes of all time when I was growing up, the Colin McCarthy. Colin, introduce yourself to anyone who may have forgotten your name. You wore that number 44 in such a way, man.
I
Please
was gonna,
introduce yourself.
yeah, the 44 jersey at the U. Had to make sure I represented it. So hopefully, after what's it been, 10 years now since I graduated. So hopefully, the 44, when they see the number, they
Oh, yeah.
relate it to Colin McCarthy.
Absolutely, man. Was Dan Morgan, was that the reason why you wanted to wear number 44?
Not at all.
Okay.
No, it's funny. I love the number, and at the time, a lot of the as a freshman coming in, you really don't get a whole lot of you know, I guess, the ability to get a number that you truly want, um, it's like a pecking order. You know what I mean? I think when I got there, it was like John Beeson, Tavares Gooden, Daryl Sharpton, uh, Sean Spencer Atkins, excuse me. They had the lower 50 numbers.
Right.
And then 44 was available. I think before me it was Leon Williams.
Okay.
I think Leon had the 44, and
Yeah.
he had graduated, and I came in, and I was like, yeah, I'll rock the 44. I love the number, and hopefully I made a name for it while my time was there.
Gotcha. Hey, Colin, how did you end up at Miami? I know you went to Clearwater High School. You're originally from Pennsylvania, right?
Yep, that's right. Yep.
Yeah. So how did that connection with the University of Miami take place? Kind of go over your recruitment story.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's funny. I had a mentor in high school that was a big Florida State booster.
Okay.
So throughout high school, especially as a freshman and sophomore, obviously Florida State at the time, he was pushing it. And I think I went to at least one, if not, two of the Florida State games during my high school years. But as far as when I got there, they didn't really, like my junior year, they didn't really recruit me. And then when it came down to it, it was really between Penn State, Ohio State, and Miami. I had a teammate ahead of me, AJ Trump. He was recruited by, obviously the university, and then he played there the year before me. So, when I think it was at the time, Coach Hargraves. Coach Hargraves was the linebacker coach, and then Shannon was, I believe, at that time the DC. And then when Hargraves, the year I got there, Hargraves got fired during my recruiting, and then Shannon became my position coach. So it ended up working out real great. And then ultimately, Shannon was my head coach there until I graduated.
Yeah.
So it was really weird, but I would say at the end of the day, it came down to Miami or Ohio State.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because Ohio State, I mean, the tradition there, they had at linebackers at the time.
Yeah.
I think it was Carpenter, Schlegel, and then AJ Hawk.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was their starting three, and then they had James Laurinaitis.
Yeah.
I think he was 1 year ahead of me. So when I took my recruiting trip up there, I met him. But that's like Big Ten football. They're not very athletic. You know what I mean?
Right.
As far as playing college ball, playing high school ball in Florida, and just being more of the style of play of linebackers at the University of Miami, and then ultimately what it came down to was what's my best opportunity to play in the league, and I was just like Miami, all the first round picks, and just the guys who played in the league, and the success that they had from the position, linebacker wise at Ohio State. They were great linebackers in college, but when they got to the league, they really didn't, I wouldn't say they didn't have great careers, but, not to the level that, the linebackers did at the U.
Right. Absolutely, Colin. It's funny you mentioned NFLU, Miami, and great athletes at Miami as well. Can you tell me about that transition from being in high school to going to a blue blood in college football and going up against all these great athletes every day? How was that transition for you?
Honestly, it was to me probably it felt pretty smooth. I mean, it was
Okay.
actually, at the end of the day, it's football. You know what I mean? I think that's one thing when you put it all, aside. At the end of the day, I've been playing football since I was 6, 7 years old. So
Absolutely.
to make it into anything more than that, but leading up to it, I mean, obviously, those are grown men out there, and I'm 17-year-old, 18-year-old, graduating high school, going to college, and you're going against grown men. I can remember, my first year there. I mean, obviously at the offensive line, I think it was like Andrew Bain, Wolschlager, Derek Morris. I mean, these guys were like animals. So I was like, for one, I weighed in, I think, 212 pounds my freshman year playing linebacker. But it was great. I mean, it was like I said, I got the opportunity when I was a freshman
Oh
to
yeah.
play special teams. I played special teams my
Yeah.
freshman year, and I made some splash plays there, made some big plays, and like I said, ultimately my sophomore year, I was able to start, which was pretty
Yeah.
sweet.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think your freshman year was a pretty unique year because it was Larry Coker's last year. I remember that game against Louisville in the pregame scuffle, we'll call it, with Willie Williams was on the other team as well. I don't know if you remember him. He was at Miami beforehand.
Yeah,
Kyle Wright was coming in with a lot of hype, number one quarterback in the nation out of high school. He was going to be his junior year or sophomore year that season. Came out after a good freshman year.
yeah, I want to say it was his junior year.
Yeah.
Yep.
You guys were ranked in the top 20, top 15, I want to say. It was a decently ranked team. What happened, do you think, that went downhill? I know it was a very emotional year, but what do you think the locker room was lacking, and what did you take from that season going into your sophomore year?
I think with any team, it starts with the leadership of the seniors and upperclassmen. I think even in any sport, you need great leadership from the players, and obviously, the coaches play a role to a certain extent. But at the end of the day, the players are the one on the field. The players are the ones making the calls, making the decisions, and ultimately, they're playing the game. I think you know, um, people kind of, put the praise on the coaches sometimes, in certain things. And then obviously, the coaches get, kind of the short end of the stick with, being fired and stuff like that. But, the players have to hold each other accountable. I think that's, the biggest thing that we lacked many of the years was just, veteran leadership, senior leadership to really, basically put the foot down and say, all right, enough is enough. And let's make some changes, some real changes. And never did that, that year.
Hey, Colin, speaking of coaching, has coaching at the college level or at any level, high school, ever like crossed your mind?
Yeah, I thought about high school actually going
Really?
back to
Okay.
my old high school. They've been on me for I think 3 years now to come back and help out. Um, so it's something I'm thinking about doing. Obviously,
Yeah, absolutely.
I got a love hate relationship, I guess you could say, with football because how kind of my career ended, because of injury. But um, when the time's right, I want to get back into it because obviously um, it's a lot more love for the game than hate, and to be able to coach at the high school level where it's football at the purest. There's nothing better than Friday night lights, playing with your buddies and guys who you go to high school with, school with, and a lot of those guys still to this day I have relationships with. I mean, obviously college as well, but not to the same extent.
Colin, Randy Shannon, he took over in 2007. Can you go over like just some differences of like during practice, the difference between Coach Shannon and Larry Coker? Larry Coker was such a nice guy. Kind of what were the different demeanors of both coaches?
Oh yeah, two completely different styles, two completely uh, I mean, talk about like opposites as far as coaching wise, and then obviously, player wise, having to adjust to that. I think,
Right.
from a defensive side of the ball, we were familiar with Coach Shannon. You know, what I mean, we had him as the DC. Linebacker wise, had him as a position coach. So, I understood, you know, what he was about, what he expected. If you did something great, it was expected. You know what I mean? You to do something great. And then obviously when you did something bad, he was on your ass for it. You know what I mean? So he was a hard coach. But he was, I loved him. I mean, when I look back at my time there and our relationship, I knew what he expected, and he expected, he expected you to be on point all the time. And I think the mentality that he instilled in not just me, but a lot of the guys there on defense, they were able to go to the NFL and further their careers and be successful because of it.
Gotcha. Absolutely. By the way, there's like this rumor going around that Randy Shannon hated the walk from Duke's locker room to the stadium. Was that adamantly he did not like to walk that far? I mean, it was like a big thing. Like he just hated it. Did you hear about that or?
I mean, it was a hike. I mean, it was probably mile walk or mile trot based upon our locker rooms were. I can remember. I think it was at halftime. We wouldn't go back to the locker room. Like we would just
Oh wow.
hang out. I mean,
Yeah.
it almost felt like a high school stadium where you go, hang out in the end zone during halftime until you started the kickoff for the second half.
I mean, that's why it's a basketball school.
Exactly.
Hey, Colin, who did you look up to during your time at Miami? Was it a specific coach, specific player that was mentored to you?
I think my freshman year, John Beeson. John Beeson was a big.
Okay.
Yeah, he was my roommate.
Okay.
My freshman year when we traveled. So when we'd be on road trips and stuff like that, Beeson would be he'd be there. Obviously, he was a really smart player. So a lot of the time when we'd be in the hotel, we'd be studying the playbook. We'd have like tests that we'd have to do, and I'd be like asking questions and understanding things. It's one thing to understand a defense and what you're trying to do, but when you start to, learn the game of football and you're able to understand what the offense is doing and then how you're going to attack that defensively, you become more of a student of the game and the game becomes a lot easier.
Okay. Yeah, no, Beeson, he's a very nice guy. I actually lived fairly close to him when I was living in Miami.
Okay.
Knowledgeable guy, very stand-up individual. Hey, Colin, you're
Another one's Glenn Cook. I gotta give
Glenn Cook. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was a veteran.
Yeah, the OG Glenn Cook.
Yeah.
Because I think Beeson graduated after my freshman year, but then my sophomore year, I was able to play with Cook as a sophomore there, and he was another guy, student of the game, obviously size-wise and I guess you could say talent-wise.
Oh yeah.
He maximized that while he was playing, obviously at the University of Miami. But yeah, he was another guy who was a big influence and just helping me understand the game of football a lot better.
Hey, Colin, you during your time in Miami, you played in some big games. I remember the headlines. Miami was going to go up to Norman, Oklahoma, week 2, and they started a redshirt freshman by the name of Sam Bradford. The rest is history. I mean, he wins the Heisman Trophy. Great player. You also went up against Tim Tebow. Can you what's the experience like going up against 2 Heisman Trophy winners compared to other QBs?
It's funny. I think Bradford at the time, the bigger issue was DeMarco Murray, I think, was the running back.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So I can remember, I think it was either the second or third play of the game. They run a toss sweep to my side. And I think offensive lineman wise, they had Trent Williams was the offensive lineman. He was pulling, and then they had some other monster pulling too. And I dip inside both the blocks, and I put the side of my head on DeMarco Murray's knee, and I thought I had a tackle for loss.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, I turned to the side from when I made the contact, and all I see is DeMarco Murray run down the sidelines, and I think Randy Phillum pushed him out of bounds. And that was the second play of the game, and I was like, this is going to be a long game. This is going to be a really long game from that play on. But no, I mean, you talk about two completely different style quarterbacks to win the Heisman. I mean, Sam Bradford was your pocket passer. He wasn't going to scramble, but, when he did, it was effective because you didn't anticipate it. And then obviously Tim Tebow, he was more of a third running back in the backfield there at Florida when they ran, certain run plays, or even when he take off, from the pocket as a passer. It was difficult to defend.
It was 2009 when you guys got back at Oklahoma with Ja'Cory Harris.
Oh yeah, down at Miami, yeah.
Oh yeah,
that was big. I remember I think it was Ray Armstrong playing safety there, and
that big hit.
Put that lick on that running back, yeah, when he tried to hurdle.
Speaking of that season, Paul, I want to pick your brain because whoever created that schedule is an idiot. Georgia Tech, Florida State, Oklahoma. I think Virginia Tech was the fourth team. Ohio State was the following year. What happened? I know you guys started off hot, then a slip to Clemson under a young Dabo Sweeney.
Yeah.
What do you think?
That was overtime, wasn't it? We lost that game?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that was a bad loss. It's tough because, even now with the way the college football is, when you lose, mentally, it takes a lot to kind of look to the next game and realize, you still have a lot to play for. I think that's one thing, from our time is, especially when we used to play Florida State the first season of the game. If you win that game, mentally you're like, all right, let's run the table. You lose that game, and then you're like, oh shit, now we're game back in the ACC, and on top of that, we lost to Florida State. So that's a tough pill to swallow there to start the season. But yeah, I remember that Clemson game. I think I had a big hit on CJ Spiller there. He had a fumble. I think that was that game. But yeah, it's tough. Like I said, I think it starts with the coaches, but then leadership within the locker room. I think, getting guys to buy in. But at the end of the day, when you're college students, and, it takes a certain mentality. It takes a certain amount of maturity, especially, being at Miami. There's a lot of distractions to, focus on football. And then even when things aren't going well, to stick with the process and what the coaches are telling you, and, buying in. And, it's frustrating because we lost a lot of games that we shouldn't have. Like you said, we played, I think that year, and even the year after that, we had, we beat big teams. Like you said, we beat Oklahoma there. I think Texas A&M too at the time. We played them.
Yep.
And that was a big game because they had, they were highly ranked as well. We beat Florida State a lot up there in Tallahassee, which, was a tough thing to do. But yeah, looking back, there's so many games where you're like, damn, we lost to, when that last game in the Orange Bowl, when we lost to Virginia the way we did,
I remember.
That was embarrassing.
Colin, you returned a fumble for a touchdown that would have changed the game, but they called it back. Do you remember that?
I remember that. I think they called his knee down or something.
Yeah.
What it was. Or they called it was a excuse my French, but a BS call.
Yeah, no, 100%. Completely changed the momentum of the game as well.
it changed the momentum. At the same time, they were running that double tight end look, and we had different calls or different checks depending on, because they ran like a 3 tight end look, so they'd have almost like a wing type of set with the opposite a tight end on the backside, and we had, I used to always say, especially to the coaches when I was able to voice my opinion, and it would have some type of, what's the word, have some type of meaning behind it, or they take it into consideration, is, the easier we were able to just line up and play because of the athletes we had on the defensive side of the ball, we could hold guys, good teams to very limited success against us. But when we start doing blitzing and we're doing, they come out in one formation, they motion or this, and then we change it, guys weren't understanding what we were trying to run. And at certain points out there, it was, a fire drill trying to get lined up, and you can't win that way.
No, absolutely. Hey, Colin, if there was one more home game, screw the Hard Rock Stadium, at the Orange Bowl, who would you want to suit up against?
I think it would be that Florida team back in
Florida,
back with Tebow there, but
Tebow,
I think
Aaron Hernandez.
we need a better quarterback.
You
give us our same defense we had.
Yeah.
You give us a better quarterback, or give us not even a better quarterback. Give us a better offensive coordinator.
Yeah, no,
Better
absolutely.
offensive coordinator, because I can remember parts in that game. I think it was 9-3 at halftime. Was that right?
Yeah, no, it was a 7-3, 9-3. It was a close game. Things were looking good.
I remember we got because we had the safety on the at the end of there with Bosher. They snapped it over his head, I believe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And then he kicked it out of the end zone. So, I mean, when we're 9-3 against Florida, in the swamp, and they had a solid team. They had a really good team, but offensively we couldn't move the ball. And offensively from Florida they were good, but defensively, they didn't have anybody great, and we weren't able to put up points. And ultimately, I think Florida scored. They went up, whatever that was, and then they scored one more late, bullshit Urban Meyer type of score at the end of the game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The field goal, and then Randy Shannon basically said "F you" and took off. I don't know if you ever saw that, but they shook hands, and Randy just said "F off."
Oh yeah, I mean probably well deserved from Meyer's standpoint, because he was a clown.
Hey, Colin, you played, like you just mentioned, you played on a lot of teams where the defense was very good, but the offense didn't deliver. I think quarterback was an issue at times. Robert Marv, Ja'Cory Harris flipping back and forth. Kyle Wright, Kirby Freeman didn't get it right. Is it very frustrating as a team and in the locker room, to have one part of the team, delivering and the other part just not showing up?
It's definitely not easy. I'd say that, because the guys are competitive, and I mean, even from an offensive standpoint, when they're not putting up points, we still had great athletes on the offensive side of the ball, and to not put up points, obviously it was frustrating for them. And it's a mix of ultimately play calls, because whatever they send in, especially from our quarterback standpoint, they weren't mature enough or given the ability to check from a run to a pass, or from a pass to a run. So it was basically whatever was called was going out. And I can remember sitting on the sidelines a lot of the time, and I don't even have to know what the down and distance. I can just see what we're doing and be like, oh, here's a run on, just third down and long. And it just a lot of times just never made any type of sense. So that was frustrating. And then what happens is you get, especially on the defensive side, you get guys out of position trying to make, big time plays, game changing plays, because, it got to a certain point sometimes there where it was like, defensively, we need to score. We need to force a turnover, or we need to, get an interception or whatever it is to really make an impact on this game. And to have that mentality, isn't the best mentality, especially from a team standpoint when the offense isn't putting up any points.
Speaking, defensive side of the football, are you familiar? Did you follow, Canes football in the past couple seasons, certain players, or I know it's hard when once you leave the game, you have a career path to follow it. Were you following the program?
Yeah, I followed it. I watched,
Yeah.
I watched a lot of the games that were bearable. I mean, some of those games
Right.
there, they
100%.
were tough to watch. I mean, even this past season, watching the way they played, um, because I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's to play at the University of Miami from my first day there, and even like I said when I was being recruited, there's so many great players that have played before you. So it doesn't matter, you know, win, lose, whatever it is. You got a certain standard that you have to play towards or play to.
Absolutely.
And like a lot of those things. I mean, your ability to chase the ball. Guys, not being in the right position. I mean, you saw that time in and time out last year, and it was, just frustrating to watch because you're like, man, how can you go from, being a dominating defense and then, regress as the years go on and as you become, older? You think that they'd be able to, take that next step and really be dominant as a defense. And, the offense there came along, but it was like shootouts, and it didn't make sense from, the year before being dominant and then slacking or, having to fall off the way they did. I just didn't understand it.
And speaking of development, our linebacker core, they called it the Bermuda Triangle. I'm not going to comment on that name. What did you think about Shaq Quarterman, Michael Pickney, Zach McLeod? What way they could have developed? What were some things you did like about the group?
What did they call themselves?
The Bermuda Triangle, I guess kind of after there was, I guess, another group. I think Jesse Armstead was in it. Some other former players that
That
took
when
the
Michael
name first.
Barrow was in and
Yeah,
stuff?
I believe so.
Yeah, I mean, to try to give yourself a self-proclaimed name is never good. And then obviously from a core of linebackers that were first and second round picks and go on to have 10, 15-year careers, the future will tell that. But, I would say the last 2 years there, especially, they didn't live up to it. But, for whatever reason that may be, who knows? I mean, I have no clue. I'm not trying to bash those guys, but,
Right.
They came in as freshmen and were, making splash plays. I think I may have been doing the radio show, post-game radio show, for their freshman years when they were
Okay.
freshmen there. I believe so. I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, Quarterman was making TFLs. He was, interceptions. He was making, I like to think of splash plays, plays that are going to
Right.
change the game. And, from the last year or two there, those guys really didn't do that. I'm not sure if it was injury wise. They were playing through injury. I think Pinkley was dealing with some injuries.
Yeah, he was banged up. Yeah.
Yeah, he was banged up. And, ultimately, I mean, I've dealt with the injuries. Obviously, that's why my career got cut short playing in the NFL. But it's tough. It's tough. But like I said, when you're out there and you're in between those lines, you got to play with a certain, dog mentality, especially, being a linebacker at the U. And, I'm hoping, this year I'm excited. Hopefully there's a season so we can watch them play.
No, absolutely, Colin. There's a lot of praise and expectation within the program for our underclassmen that are coming in, and I think they're great athletes. Sam Brooks had 12 tackles against Louisiana Tech, and that was his first start of his college career. I think he has a bright future at Miami. Local kid. A viewer asked this question, Colin. I think it's a good question. How do you feel about the 4-2-5 defense under Blake Baker? If that does that cater to our athletes? And what do you think about the striker position as well?
Honestly, like at the end of the day, even if it's a 4-2-5, it's a 5-2, if it's a 4-3 or a 3-4, at the end of the day, you're always going to have certain guys in certain positions to run a cover 2, run a cover 3. So it doesn't really change anything, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
You're always going to have, if you're just running a normal set, you'll have 4 guys rushing. So if you're in what are they running now, you said?
4-2-5 defense.
Yeah, so a 4-2-5. So you always have the front 4 guys, rushing the passer. You'll have 2 linebackers, and then basically that striker, I guess, is the 3rd linebacker.
Yes.
Basically,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
So he'll probably be the guy who's filling in the box and playing that will position. So it's like I said, at the end of the day, it's just football. So they put certain names. I can remember, in the league we run a 3-4, and the outside linebacker would be like a buck, and he'd be the 4th rusher for the most part. In our 3-4 package. Like,
Okay.
there's not a whole lot to it. So the biggest thing is just making sure defensively from the guys who are in those positions know their responsibility, know what they're doing, and if they know what they're doing, they know their responsibility, then they can play fast. And I think
Gotcha.
from players, whether it's DBs, linebackers, even the D line. I mean, the D line this year, we have a bunch of studs. I mean,
Right.
our bookends, they each got 15 plus sacks last year.
Yes. Gregory Rousseau is probably going to be a top 5 pick in one prediction. They already had him as. Mel Kiper says he's one of the best underclassmen prospects. So there's a high ceiling for him.
Of course. Yeah. So, I mean, you take that alone and, live up to or past that expectation. I mean, that's always been, the idea of players at the university. And then ultimately, they go on and be dominant in the league. And I think, with that being said, from getting back to the question with the scheme, I mean, like I said, they can rush the quarterback with just 4. So,
Okay.
They can rush the quarterback with just 2. I mean, drop 9 and let those 2 DNs get after it. I mean, why not? It's not realistic. I'm just saying. But like I said, defensively from a D-back standpoint, play 5 in coverage. Let those guys, get up on the line of scrimmage and be physical, and let those D linemen, especially the DNs, get after the passer.
No, absolutely, Colin. And, reviewing Coach Diaz's first year, what were some positives that you saw? I know it was tough when you go 6-7. There's not really positives. And what were some things he needs to address going into year 2 as he was a first-year head coach? So we can't put too much pressure on him, but it's Miami. That's part of the job, is to win now, because we want to win so bad. So, what positives and just what are some things we need to address going into year 2?
I think they started great with, the additions they made on the offensive coordinator position, bringing in somebody who has a run and gun, mentality from the offensive side. And, I guess you could say defense win championships at any level. And college level is no different, but you have to be able to score, college-wise. I think, even great defense. I mean, look at the national championship teams. They're, those offenses are high-powered offenses, but, and they're putting up points. So we got to be able to match that. And I think, this guy King, who came in from Houston, has that dual threat ability, which is going to be something we haven't had there since God knows when. I mean, I can't even think of somebody who has the talent level.
Oh, absolutely.
Not just as a thrower, but being able to scramble, extend plays. That's going to be huge for us.
100%.
But no, I mean, I don't know. I hope Diaz, takes more of a defensive mentality while he's there, because, like I said, when he was the DC, and making all the decisions and, focusing on that, they were dominant, and it was the offense that was missing. Hopefully this new offensive coordinator takes over as far as, he's like, you take care of that. I'm going to get this defense right, and, play off of each other that way, compete during practice and in camp when that starts up, and then just win. I mean, winning heals a lot of those questions and a lot of those things. And, the guys down there now, hopefully, can do that.
No, absolutely, Colin. Another question that came in from a viewer. It's a legitimate question. I feel like it's very good. What's the difference in speed between the NFL and college?
The speed isn't a whole lot different. I'd say the thing is the margin for error. I think when you see a long run take place, it's one guy being out of position. And it comes down to literally you can pinpoint who made that mistake. And I think defensively from the college in general, there's I guess you say it's more gap sound from the NFL to where you have your responsibility and then you go make a play. Where I felt like college, it was more of the ability to kind of run and gun, where defensive linemen were almost playing two gap, and you use your athleticism more. Where in the NFL, it's more gap sound.
Okay, very good, awesome. I did not know that. Colin, man, I know the Alonzo Highsmith personally. For me, I said some things on Twitter. I don't ever want Blake James to hear. A lot of fans, everybody was very mad, adamantly mad. Do you like the Ed Reed hire, or do you think it's smokescreen? Because a lot of people are thinking, how is this guy going to help us if he's not even in the state of Florida?
Who's that?
Ed Reed.
Yeah, I mean, my honest opinion is when Highsmith became available, I was all about it. I mean, his mentality as a player back in the day was what the mentality of the players needs to be now. I mean, he had that dog mentality. I think, what was it, Oklahoma, when that 30 for 30 thing is?
Yeah.
But he's like that regardless. It just happened to be on film where they captured it. But that was the mentality and the mindset that those guys had. And, I played with his son, AJ, and his mentality and the way he takes on the game. And just, I think now he's a scout and stuff like that for for the NFL, but he would have been an unreal addition. I mean, I love Ed Reed, obviously his Hall of Fame career and the way he played at Miami was unmatched as far as at any position there. So it's going to be good. I didn't understand, like you said, they said that he's not going to be out at the practices, so I really don't know what type of effect he's going to have day to day on the players in the program, where, Highsmith comes in and is, in the mix day in and day out with the players. The way he is and his mentality, it's just going to rub off on the players. So I really wish that would have happened, but, you gotta roll with the punches. And, Ed Reed being on staff, it's a positive no matter how you look at it.
No, absolutely. No, one of the best safeties to ever play the game. And I think sealing the deal in recruiting, when Ed Reed calls you up and he says, hey, you need to be a Miami Hurricane, you better say yes. So I 100% agree. And
I think that was one of the main reasons why that safety there that they had circled in to go to Florida and then he came to Miami.
Demonte Williams. Yep.
I think he, the Ed Reed being on staff, and I think I heard where Ed Reed was working with him during the Under Armour game and whatnot.
Yeah.
All that stuff plays a huge part. I mean, the ability to I'm going to it makes a huge difference for those players. I can remember, as a 18-year-old kid, especially being, I think where's he from? He's from the Tampa north of Tampa area, right?
Ed Reed?
No, he's from Louisiana.
The safety is from Orlando.
Okay, yeah. So he knows Ed Reed and he's seen his career and just what type of person he is and player he is ultimately, and to learn from a Hall of Famer. I mean, who wouldn't decide to go there, especially from Florida? Come on.
Hey, Colin, what's it like playing a game at the Swamp compared to Doe Campbell Stadium as a player? Is there anything different? I've been to the Doak. I haven't been to the Swamp yet.
Um, I mean, obviously, my time at Doak, we've always won at Doak Campbell, I believe. I don't think we lost there when I played.
No.
No, no. So playing there and obviously winning makes for I guess, a hell of a time celebrating on another team's field. Um, I would say the what would it be the what is that, the Seminole, what do they do, the
They do the
Seminole,
shot.
yeah, whatever the chop
Yeah.
thing is that they do. It gets loud there. It's a good atmosphere, obviously. The night games there are just crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember at Doak Campbell, the visitor locker room. I mean, you talk about a dump. I mean, it's worse than some high school, locker rooms. You imagine a bad high school locker room. That's what we had there there when we used to travel to Florida State. So I mean, I wouldn't say much different. I mean, I loved the battle year in and year out against Florida State. That's one thing that, ultimately, one of the perks of playing at Miami was playing against Florida State year in and year out, regardless. And you know, the ability to win up there was awesome.
Oh yeah, absolutely, Colin. And man, those were some crazy games. I remember Christian Ponder down to the wire, incomplete
Oh
pass. Everyone thought he caught it. Then you
yeah,
scooped
they're
up
in
a
the end
fumble
zone,
to seal
right?
the win.
Yeah, they're in the end zone against that game, and then
The
I think
scoop.
it was Teraz McCray my sophomore year had the sack fumble, and then I scooped it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Kirby Freeman had the drive, the game-winning drive. That was epic. That was
Yeah,
epic, man.
yeah. No, I mean, yeah, those college days, man, those days were unreal. And like I said, I mean, as you get older, I guess, and as college not as much, but obviously the NFL, you realize it's a job. Um, but the days playing with those guys defensively, I mean, still to this day, I'm close with Sean Spence, Alan Bailey, DVD. From the defensive side, Stephen Wesley,
Yeah. Wow.
Jay Lou. I mean, all those guys. When we see each other, it can be 3 or 4 years from when we see each other, and then we see each other, and it picks up. Like we're back in college, and talking about stuff or joking with each other, and that family atmosphere that they talk about at Miami. I'm sure they have it at other places where guys are close, but that family thing at the U is it's real.
Hey, Colin, I got a couple more questions. That I'll leave you to more golfing with your buddies. I know you're just watching because of your back surgery
Yeah,
and you're
yeah,
recovering.
just a spectator here. Yep.
You should pull out an air horn just to piss them off.
I know, right? They're coming up here. Yeah, I'm trying not to get hit.
Hey, Colin, what's your favorite memory as a Miami Hurricane looking back at time?
Man, I mean, you got to put the Florida State game up there. Like
Yep.
I said, that scoop of fumble recovery for a touchdown there. That was unreal. I mean, looking back at that and that play and even that game was just crazy. Um, I'm trying to think. I mean, the disappointing games. I mean, like I said, I think about that. The Virginia game there, the last game at the OB. That's still to this day sickening. Just how poorly we played, and then how it's almost like you want to stop the bleeding, so to say, and we weren't able to do it. Offensively, we sucked, couldn't score, and then defensively, we were just getting gashed, and that's the recipe for getting shut out, I believe. And I think they put up a 40 bag on us or something. So that to me, just because of the mentality I have, that type of loss is just sick. I'm trying to think of some other really good games. Like I said, the Texas A&M game there at home, the Oklahoma game there at home when we won. Like I said, the battles against Florida State were always great. Yeah, I mean, we never, like I said, I mean, I guess every team says that. You know, there's games that you should have won, but year in and year out, our time down there, you can look back and you're like, damn, we should have won, you know, 9
Right.
games, 10
Absolutely.
games consistently. And we just didn't show up for certain games or didn't play. You know, I wouldn't even say even, you know, I mean, play great games, but we just played some piss poor games and lost that we shouldn't. And, you know, that to me is, you know, it's tough.
Hey, Colin, what do you think needs to change in this football program? What do we need to improve on to start winning 10 games, at least 10 games consistently? Because we've won 5 national titles. We've been to 13 national title games. We are NFLU. Last 15 years, we've seen flashes of success, but what needs to change, you think, internally or as a program as a whole to get back to that era?
Well, I mean, you really have to look at teams, you know, consistently now who are winning. I mean, you take a team like Alabama, you take a team like Clemson, who are, you know, year in, year out, if they're, you know, they're expecting to win 10 games, compete for the, you know, the conference championship, and then, you know, ultimately, I guess now be in that Final Four. You know what I mean? I mean, if those guys don't make that, you know, or they just expect to, they're like, we'll be in the Final Four. We'll, you know, we'll win the SEC or we'll win the ACC, obviously, in Clemson's standpoint. But like I said, it starts with the coaches, obviously, and recruiting and, you know, developing players, whether it's, you know, in the weight room. I mean, all that stuff really, you know, you have to take into consideration. I think, you know, the consistency you see from those programs are Nick Saban. You see, you know, Dabo there at Clemson.
Yeah.
That's where it starts at, and a consistent figure who's there. I mean, obviously, you know, Larry Coker, when he took over there, you know, he got the keys to, you know, I guess you could say, you know, a Rolls Royce there from, or got, you know, a Ferrari from the type of athletes he came into when he became a head coach.
Yeah.
But his ability to, you know, develop those guys and really year in and year out, like you said, win 10 games consistently, he was able to do that there for a long period of time. And that's Nick Saban. I mean, year in and year out, recruiting wise, they're getting those top, you know, talent. And it's one thing to get the top talent. It's another thing to develop it and get the most out of that. And like you see nowadays in the you know, in the NFL, I mean, it's consistent with 3 and 4 star, you know, recruits, I guess you could say, of guys who are just, you know, love the game of football. Obviously, you know, talent only takes you so far. You got to put in the work. And I mean, truly, I hope Diaz stays there for 30 years. I hope he's like a Bobby Bowden type figure there at Florida State. That's another type. You know what I mean? Bobby Bowden,
Absolutely.
that's why Florida State was all, you know, great year in and year out. And they consistently won because you have a stable coach who's not leaving.
Right.
You know, from, you know, a player standpoint, he's going to be there. And then, you know, down the line, as far as, you know, the staff, they buy into what, you know, the head coach is saying, and they're all on the same page. That to me is huge. That's key. That's why I love the fact that Diaz came back. I thought, you know, him leaving, you know, me personally, I took Mark Richt coming back and signing the contract and then, you know, retiring and dipping out. And then, you know, he's on the TV channels talking about, you know, Miami and, you know, doing his little insight on whatever, you know, thing he had there. That rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, why would you sign a contract? And then, you know, I guess they said he donated money to the program, but he made a whole hell of a lot of money to retire from the program. Then he donated back to it. So, you know, I don't know how to take that, but, you know, Diaz coming back is huge. I mean, you know, he's a Miami guy. He had the success he did defensively. I hope he, like I said, is there for a long time. I don't think there's a better job, you know, in college football than at the U. I mean, you get, you know, great talent, just start producing. And I hope, you know, the way to do that is win games. So hopefully they do that.
Hey, Colin, you hit it on the nail in the coffin this whole interview. Outstanding just advice you've given us. Just amazing information in general, man. Thank you so much. Any advice you would, want to give current players on this team right now? If you could.
I would say just take it as a job. I think, if you have that mentality as, it's a job, obviously, you're not getting technically paid for it, but you're getting a free education. But the window to, to play, the game, it's a short window. And the last thing you want to do, whether it's, your time there in college or then, if you get the opportunity to go in the NFL, that's an added bonus. But the opportunity there in college, make the most of it. The last thing you want to do is look back and say, I should have, could have, would have. And I think that's the one thing, that I'm able to say, especially from my time there at Miami, was in every game I played in, it didn't matter if we were up by 30 or we were down by 30. I was playing the game the only way I knew how, and that was balls to the wall and, trying to make plays. And I hate to see, the score of the game dictate, how hyped you're going to be to play or how, down the tank you're going to play or, that, kind of give up or not really finish is, from a player standpoint and just someone who loves the game, I hate to see it. And I saw that a lot last year. And I hope, Diaz addresses that and guys really, take that to heart. And, when you wear that U on your helmet, and I always took pride in that, was, it's more than just you're playing for yourself. There's a pipeline of guys who have played there, who either went on to play in the NFL or who just were hell of college players. I mean, there's plenty of those who I played with that, never got to the league, but were dogs and they played hard. And, I just hope I see that this year, the celebrations, the love for the game, and just playing, the game, the way the game should be played. That's it.
Colin, I'll tell you what, man, when you think of a true Miami Hurricane, the definition of a Miami Hurricane, I'm thinking of Colin McCarthy, man. You can line up with the best of them. I'm telling you, man, you were
it, man. I appreciate it. Yeah. Like I said, I hope my time playing, I want to be known for playing the game the right way and, balls out. And like I said, it didn't matter if we were up by 30 or down by 30. The way I approached the game, from the snap till, the whistle was balls out. And, that's if I did that and I got hurt, I'll live with it. And that's kind of what my mentality is now, being away from the game because of injury is, I wouldn't have done it any other way.
Colin, it was an honor to watch you play. It's a privilege to have you on the show, man. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll let you go and enjoy some spectating, man.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Speedy recovery as well, man. You'll be in my prayers. All right, man.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Anytime.
Great to be on.
All right, everyone. That was Colin McCarthy. When you think about some of the great Miami Hurricanes that have played the game the past 10 years, maybe in the modern era. I was born in 94. Colin McCarthy is definitely one of those names, man. He wore that number 44 in such a way, and wish him the best of luck in his future endeavors, his career opportunities. And, man, I can't thank you guys enough for joining the show tonight. It was a great show, and, man, I can't wait to bring on more guests as well, maybe former players or just people who are involved in the Miami Hurricanes football program. So if you have any suggestions, definitely write them down. And thank you again, guys, for coming on the show. Have a great rest of your day and stay safe.